you do not interfere with our lecture. So please, colleagues, dear friends, I have a simple task ahead to try to say something about technology to you. I'm not a futurologist, not a futurist. I'm not a high-tech scientist. So I can only say something about technologies to you in terms of what we do right now and how what is my vision of these technologies as the head of one of the companies that is undergoing a technological transformation. So I do not want to make it a trend-setting and comprehensive lecture. This is just my point of view, let's say, from the perspective of a company that has been committed itself to this trend for a long time. Now, three things that I wanted to talk about. I would like to have two parts of discussion. Perhaps a timer should be, a stopwatch can be launched here. Colleagues from the engineering department, could you please make sure that I have a stopwatch? Oh, fantastic. Great job, thanks. Okay, yeah, just like that. So, the trends. Yesterday, we talked with Jack Ma, with one of my colleagues from China, and he says one thing. Forget about IT. Forget about information technologies. This is yesterday. This is nothing. This is ridiculous because the economy of data, this is something that we have today. And I agree with him here. Something that we call digitalization. This is the latest trend. And moving to that trend means that we have at our hands mature technologies that help us to process great volumes of data. And at the threshold of 2010, there was a major shift when the big data technologies became mature. And they became available to all companies. And we say that 2010s, these are the years of going from the information age to digital age. And from 2015, we can see the appearance of major capacities to store and collect data, not only to process data, but to store this data. So we can see an exponential trend, exponential growth that will be related to the storage and collection of great volumes of data. Now, if you look at the speed of the growth, the dynamics of this trend, what data are going to be collected, here we can see the diagram of IBM, an IBM arm that is doing research. This is perhaps one of the most recent forecasts. And you can see how the volume of data is going to change, not in the nearest 20, 30 years, but in the nearest 6, 7 years. And the majority of data are going to be generated by Internet of Things, IoT. And the largest part are data about geolocation, data about the state of different devices, and medical record data. So these are going to be generated by the various medical sensors that we call wearables sensors that are going to communicate to other devices the data about our health state, and they are going to monitor our health. Now, the technologies today is the key trend. Yesterday, the president of our country, Vladimir Putin, said that the key trend, the top priority trend in geopolitics right now, is scientific and technology trend. He said that it goes beyond the national level, and I think this is was the right thing to do, because all the countries are now committing themselves to the development of the key technologies. And these technologies will radically change everything that we see around us. They will radically change the economy. They will radically change the education system, the government system, governance system, the structure of the corporations are going to be transformed, and we will have to transform dramatically as well. We can now see that the key trend in the economy is the economy of ecosystems. More and more companies are becoming are providing many services, are providing a myriad of services. A company starts in one area, and when it develops a competence and a knowledge, and when it acquires the necessary amount of data, they become marketplaces to deliver services. And here you have one of the persons here, Mr. Romanenko, the founder of Kiwi company, a very successful entrepreneur. 2 years ago, he came to us with the idea and said that the most chaotic area, the most underdeveloped area is commerce. And I want to do commerce. And we said, well, come on. You are here, you're in one business, and commerce is a totally another business. He said, yeah, perhaps I don't understand something, but since there is a total chaos there, we will be able to do something. And together with him and the team of our guys, we created a company which is called Avatar. And Avatar, it is a kind of evolution of commerce. We could have called it Revator, like the revolution of commerce. And right now, he thinks that by gathering the data from the cash registers that generate a lot of data, and you're producing these cash registers, and you have produced how many? 250,000 cash registers from the start of this year. So they gather all these fantastic volumes of information, and he thinks that they will be able to become this large marketplace that will focus on the needs of the small and medium businesses, and perhaps it is very probable that these services will be then moved to B2C model. This is just one of the examples on how the carriers of experience, how those who have the experience have the technologies, because he went from a totally different area to this business, and we believed this guy because he has experience, he has the knowledge, he is one of the leaders in high tech. And we believe that this venture is going to be a unicorn, so it's going to cost more than $1 billion. And whatever the area, you need to understand that there are fantastic opportunities to become successful. Now, the cornerstone of the current economy is ecosystems. Now, the economy of the past was based on the left-hand side of the slide. This is the model, the classical economy. It was quite chaotic relations between customers and producers of goods and services, and between them there were distributors. Right now, all companies are striving to become a conductor of an ecosystem, an orchestrator, because this means that you will have a huge flow of data, a huge flow of orders, and a very high competence that you will be able to provide as a service to producers and customers. This is a very low margin business, but this is a very profitable business. The profits will be very high, and it is guaranteed that for long years to come you will be a monopoly. So you have access to a customer and you can sell that access to other companies. Currently, the key trend in the world is creation of ecosystems. We can see that the most developed country in terms of development of ecosystems is China. Tencent, Alibaba, Pinyin, Baidu, and even that industrial company as Haier said that they are going to be the first to create an ecosystem. In the US, we see a number of companies that can say that they are ecosystems already. I think Google, Amazon, and Apple can actually be regarded as an ecosystem. eBay and Facebook do try to become an ecosystem as well. And here we showed you the key economic indicators that testify to the fact that to be a platform company, to be an orchestrator of an ecosystem is very profitable. Market assesses this company with totally different multiples. They are much more expensive, and the analysts think that their outlook is very bright. Much brighter than the other companies. What should you do to become the center of this ecosystem? You need platform. For many time, we try to identify what is the platform, because there are many books on platforms. I have read 3 books on platforms. There was a lot of research there, but this is just something that you don't need really. You just need to understand what is platform, what is a foundation of this platform. And so we coined 8, 10 key attributes of the platform. This is the platform that should have the features of real-time analytics. For that, it needs to be focused, it needs to be operating in the cloud, it should be secure, it should be flexible, and it is the technology that uses in-memory computing all the time, because the platform has to deliver services in just milliseconds, which is called like a data flow analytics technology. And this platform should be open source platform. If it's not an open source platform, it is going to be outdated the next day it is created. This is a major challenge for the banks, because the technological platforms are not usually built on open source features. But we decided on that option. We did not understand how to build a platform, what are the principles, but we understood that we cannot compete on the international level, that we need to aggregate this competition within, to aggregate it in-house, to make sure that all our developers update our platforms. And this was the right choice. Our efforts to create this new platform show that if it had not been an open source platform, it would take us 3-fold more time to actually create this platform. And all the things related to artificial intelligence and machine learning are obviously inevitable in terms of the development of the company as a platform. Now, what can we expect? I think one of the most popular and renowned experts and futurists is Ray Kurzweil. It is a person who can predict the future really nicely and really precisely. And when he makes a forecast, he makes sometimes crazy forecasts with unrealistic time frames. But basically all of his forecasts actually came true, even before he actually forecasted it. Even before the year, he thought that it will be true. And I would like to underline and emphasize just one idea here. We see that all technologies are going to lead to an exponential growth of the world. Kurzweil said that the development of the civilization in the 21st century is going to go 5 times faster than in the 20th century, and that we are going to pass the development phase of the 20th century in just 20 years in the 21st century. That estimate leads to the fact that many researchers and experts and futurists think that all 100% cycle of the development of the 20th century, we were able to address it in just 14 years. And the next 100 years worth of development will be done in 7 years. I mean, in terms of the significance of the change, it will be comparable to 100 years of development of the 20th century. Then it will take us only 3 years to pass this 100 years of development. And perhaps the technological cycle of the 20th century will be leaped in just several months in the more distant future. And I think this is the major message that I want to convey. Our predictive force is based on linear models. We approximate our past. Many of you work with various analytical tools, including simple tools that help you to analyze big data, and usually they have this function which is called trend building. So you push a button and the machine builds a trend for you. And we think in the same manner. We have some data, we aggregate them, depending on the volume and cleanness of this data, we can predict some trends. But we are not going to see that story in the future. You know, there is a thing which is called a turkey surprise, a surprise of a turkey. Perhaps you know what it is. So, surprise of a turkey is the following. A turkey, thinks that her owner has the goal to feed this turkey. And she just is eating all the food that is given to her. And then there is a surprise, and she thinks that it's okay. It has always been like that. She just needs to eat. And then the Christmas comes, and there is a surprise. And this is what will happen to us, like with that turkey. And it is hard to change that mindset, to go from the linear predictions of how the world is going to be developed. But we need to do that. And we think that the major technology, the hottest trend that we need to talk about, the technology that should be used in any business, is artificial intelligence, of course. This is the trend. I mean, as a trend, as a major trend, this is a trend that has been around for perhaps 1 or 2 years only. And these are the key areas of the artificial intelligence applications that we use in our company. This is natural language processing, and it is within this area there are several other areas like the language recognition, identification of a person who speaks the language, because obviously each of us has this identification trait which is called voice. And now the machines can recognize you by voice with 97% accuracy. When we have the accuracy of 99.99%, we're going to use it to deploy it across our company. So voice recognition and sense recognition, idea recognition that are voiced over. And Sberbank launched an exciting project with the Moscow Physical and Mathematical University, which is called iPavlov. This is the creation of a deep learning network for deep recognition of speech, when a machine can recognize long dialogue. Because sometimes we forget that Siri cannot think. And our Russian Alisa, developed by Yandex, cannot think. It is based on algorithms. And we cannot make it think. But we can build algorithms that can understand the ideas, not the ideas in the phrases, in separate sentences. Because if you ask today Yandex, if you ask Google today, like a film where a broker from Wall Street is producing wine, it will say Goodyear. That's the name of the film.
Or, for instance, another film, it doesn't mean that she knows the content of the film. She knows the content of a lot of queries, search requests. These meanings, machine has learned to operate. It can sustain a long dialogue over now. It can recognize meanings and clarify meanings, something that people have failed to do, and machine still fails to do. This is what we're working on. If this is implemented, if this is achieved, that's going to change the content of our business, and the experts tell me that this is going to happen. We will raise considerably the quality and productivity of the services that we render. Analytics is one of the key areas that we pursue. And if we talk about humans, there is this very important parameter, critically important for us. It is systemic thinking. What is systemic thinking? As a basis for the person to be functionally good, a functionally good manager, researcher, or whatever, it's about two processes. If you now ask the audience, who of you has bad systemic thinking? Could you raise a hand? What are we going to get? Well, there's a lot of self-criticism. Could I ask you, why do you think so? Yes, please. Why this self-criticism? Well, that I know the question to Americans, is it good or bad? Then you should put a sticker on your chest, I am bad. Too bad for you. Wrong thinking. Now, systemic thinking is about two components. These are rather good abilities. One is the ability to analyze, the ability to dive deep enough into any process to understand the patterns. The second ability is the ability of synthesis, dive back out. So the people are either analysts or synthesizers. Analysts can dive very deep. They can drill a hole in the earth. You need to pull them out by the scruff of their necks. These are good researchers, good scientists, but they don't do discoveries because they're going to come up with a lot of iron ore, but they can't draw conclusions from this iron ore. The second is superficialdom. You all encounter people who draw very quick conclusions. You know, the formal logic, they generalize too quickly. People can take several facts, they draw certain conclusions, and as often as not, after the event does not mean because of the event. People do not build up enough of causality to legitimize their conclusions. So when you ask a certain thing of someone, the person comes back to you, the person comes with a solution, the person can't really support that conclusion, it comes back with rework in 2 days, the person still can't support that conclusion. That means that there's no systemic thinking, very poor analytics. Today, we need people with systemic thinking, and I do think that you are capable of systemic thinking because you are able to self-criticize. As a rule, self-critical people have it the right way when they are asked to think systemically. Systemic thinking is a foundation for teamwork. So this is a chart that shows the logic, the rationale of decision-making, including that may be performed with AI. The first happens with the question what, then why, what will happen, forecast, and then predictions. Artificial intelligence has traveled all these 4 steps in its development. Now this slide, I like it very much. It really strikes me. I don't believe in it, but a lot of very interesting experts are behind this slide. They're much more ambitious than I am. That's why I don't believe in it. But this is a prediction of how quickly self-driving cars, Uber-modeled self-driving cars, are going to develop in the market. Now, 2 years ago, we went to the Silicon Valley, and one of the professors in Stanford University said he had a wager, a bet with another professor. The wager is that his son, the son of the professor, is going to travel in 3 years in a self-driving car from his house on the outskirts of Palo Alto to Stanford campus, no driver behind the wheel. and no driver driving the car. And the deadline is 2020. 1 year down the line, Elon Musk actually announced this year that the first self-driving car, Tesla, will drive without the driver operating the wheel between New York and Los Angeles. This is a bit longer than the distance between Palo Alto and Stanford campus, about one country bigger. And the guys who shook on that wager, they are not really guys from the street. These are the two professors of Stanford. This is a cradle of technological revolution in Stanford. 1 year after their bet, we are inclined to laugh on the bet. Similar things may happen to other similar forecasts. And when forecasts like this, or, the spread of e-vehicles, electrical vehicles, when they come to the tables of conventional industries, guys, they dismiss it as complete rubbish. But the only truth is, in my opinion, never say never. So technologies of artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT are being introduced into work processes. This is reality. Colleagues, it's very easy to determine whether your company has a future or not. Unless you implement these technologies, you are late. You're late to the show. You don't have a future. And there is no there's no domain of human endeavor, social sphere, the state, the businesses, where these technologies would not come to. These technologies must hit the mainstream if your company or your organization wants to have a future. And we see these disruptions happen not just in financial services. I was unlucky. I didn't end up in an oil and gas company or even a retail company. I ended up in a financial sector. And the financial sector is not really unlucky. We are in the vortex of innovation, and we are running at a pace that we can't really have a time to look back. So we come to the Silicon Valley again. Last year, we looked carefully at what blockchain can do for us. We did this workshop when we tried to predict what happens when blockchain comes of age. And we simply understood that there's not going to be any workplaces for us in that future. We are simply redundant in this kind of a future. And then one of our colleagues is saying, well, maybe we can find some work in agro. And then professor who taught the course to us, guys, you're really rushing it. Let me invite one of the professors the other day. He put together a startup in agro. He's going to tell you what he's doing. And the next day, a professor of Stanford. The man set up a company called Impossible Foods. Impossible Foods synthesize meat biologically. 1 year ago, the professor told us about how he synthesizes it. This year, you can already buy this meat pretty much in all the stores in Palo Alto and San Francisco. You can actually try it. This year, we tried the burgers with this biologically synthesized meat. And this year, we also tried the champagne synthesized along the similar lines, artificially, in the same lab. And the vintage Dom Perignon could not be differentiated. The sommelier could not tell this artificial Dom Perignon that costs peanuts from the original Dom Perignon. Calculating power, computing capacity. What is in store for us in overcoming our current capabilities in storage of information and processing of that information? As you know, human brain, a lot of things have been written about it. There's a lot of oblique ways to measure the productivity of human brain. It is largely 10 to the degree of 16, to the power of 16, transactions per second, 10 to the power of 16. But today's supercomputer, say the Chinese supercomputer, is already capable of 10 to the power of 32 So it's about twice more capable than a human brain. In the speed of transactions and the volume of information stored, we are materially inferior to machines already. We see that in the nearest future, this gap is going to widen so dramatically that the development of the machines is not going to leave any chance for us. When is this going to happen? The common assessments are that it is going to be the turn of the fourth decade. Machines are going to be competing with general intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not going to be applicable in any one specific area. It's going to be resolving complicated issues. And the third story is the general artificial intelligence, AI, that's 2070s or 2080s of this century. Consequences, the assessment of what the consequences may be for the development of artificial intelligence. A lot of people thought about this. They started to be afraid of uncontrolled development of artificial intelligence that could lead to negative consequences as well as positive ones. I used to think of this as a cartoon or a science fiction movie, but now it is a bit different. Now when I look at science fiction, I am laughing less and less, because the more I understand how technologies develop inside Sberbank, we can see that this is an entirely probable scenario of the future. So we need to treat this very seriously. Artificial intelligence is something that we cannot fathom completely. Even founders of the neural network technology, even originators of the technology, cannot decipher the mechanisms of decision-making. And what we encounter in Sberbank, we are one of the most regulated areas of business. And if we used to operate algorithms for decision-making that we could define, when we transition those algorithms to the neural networks, we encounter a huge problem. You can't really define the decision-making process. And the bank needs to verify its models. It needs to validate the models, because that is assumption of risk. And the regulators need to verify these models. If the models are validated, if they are verified, then the regulator trusts your models, and this can be the foundation of regulation. These days, in neural network-based models, you cannot pitch to a regulator. So all the regulatory features, idiosyncrasies of applying Basel II or Basel III or Basel IV are going to hell, because all of those were predicated on the past ideas of regulations. They were not mindful of neural networks, and this is an example of what the gap can be between the current practices and the future. For our company, we have a huge problem. We have been working with the regulator for 3 years. We were trying to transition to this so-called advanced approach to regulating our risk-weighted assets. This fall, we are transitioning to just that, but we understood that this is not necessary, because if we transition to that, they're going to prescribe us from using non-verified models. And all of our models are being transitioned to neural networks. That's just one small illustration, a tiny example of how the rapid development of technologies leads to the gaps in our relations with the regulators. The final part of my talk is the skills you need for the future. You're all young. You're all tortured by this question. What do we do? Professionally meaning? If you ask one of the experts who are one way or another busy with development, they're going to tell you that you need data science as a skill. This year we went to MIT, and they are saying that the demand is huge. 2 years ago, data science used to teach about 70 people in a course. A year ago it was 140. This year it's 700 people taking the data science courses. These years, everyone is to become a data scientist. And the most ludicrous thing about this is whenever people dash rush to embrace this or that domain of human activity, the automation is going to lead to that many experts becoming redundant. So statistically, analyzing information is critically important, and the approaches to data science lie just here, but you need to understand, do you really want to do this throughout your life? Experts in data processing, you will need to become. If you see yourself working in a high-tech center, you will need to become an expert in data processing or in data science. What is failure? Failure is in success. This is about the inability to change in good time, to change when you still have the time. When we have the opportunity, we relax. We are tempted to think that this is going to last for a long time, but good times tend to run out quicker than you expect them to. 3 fatal errors are generally made. 1, you can't learn good lessons from your negative past. 2, you can't adapt to the present enough. And 3, you can't foreshadow the future the right way. What challenges await us? The first challenge is the challenge of uncertainty, something that breeds fear, what engenders this sense of imminent evil. It's not the fear of evil, it's the expectation of it. The uncertainty and ambiguity is the first challenge that every leader faces. Information overload and the pace of information flow and the speed of changes in the situation. These are probably the next challenges in terms of importance. Complexity, we are increasingly unable to give enough time to understand the complexity of the processes that we are facing, yet we do want to get the answers. We Google increasingly more, and we develop our brain increasingly less. I don't think you need to get this person introduced. You will probably know what that person is. It's one of the billionaires. I think every one of us has the wind in our lives, and we always want to get the moment right to make that leap forward. This moment will never come, never. If you are alive, if you have some hard ground underneath, do jump. Thank you, and I've got 30 minutes to take your questions. Right, how do we organize this? Am I supposed to call the questions? All right, let's start from here. Whoever is the first by the microphone is asking the question. Okay, Mr. Grev, hello. My name is Vladimir Prokopenko. I come from Rostov-on-Don. Thank you very much for a very entertaining lecture, but my question is practical. When will Sberbank open a branch in Crimea, if ever? If yes, what is supposed to happen for this to happen? If not, aren't there any alternatives for a subsidiary of Sberbank to be set up in Crimea?
And what do you do? I'm an editor of Novorossiya Information Agency. Okay, so talking about the analytical function. Why do you think we don't work in Crimea? We were there, we were present there before 2014. Your colleagues, journalists, love that topic. Why? Well, this is understandable. Because of the sanctions, yes, but what is your question then? The question is, aren't there any alternative forms? I do not know them. If you know what are these alternative ideas, alternative options, I would love to know that. Oh, I don't have them. Well, so what are we talking about then? The price of the question. Do you understand what will be the implications for Sberbank? This is not a question of you or me, a personal question. This is a question of the competitiveness of the country and of the bank as a whole. So those who always ask these questions, they just don't understand what is at stake, or they just, hype it on purpose. There is no scheme that would help us to work there without facing all the sanctions, all the package of the sanctions afterwards. We have a very good compliance and legal departments. There are very smart people who work there. There are no options, really. If we had these options, we would be present there. And if you select between getting the full blow of the sanctions and have an implication for the whole country, or to be present in Crimea, although there is a financial market in Crimea, there are many small banks who actually provide services there. They do not have this threat of being disconnected from the international flow of capital. But we need it. So I think that all those who think will understand the situation. There are quite a lot of speculation around that question. Not talk about the goals of this speculation, but let's close the question here. Mr. Graf, good day to you. Gorokhov. My name is Dmitry Gorokhov. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. Well, I'd like to thank you for your sessions. I was the student of a higher school. I wasn't a student of higher school of economics, but I was at a lecture there, and there was a lecture of Itzhak Adizes, and it was a great, inspiring lecture. And after that lecture, I became an entrepreneur. We don't have the financial capabilities of inviting such people, but thanks to you for doing that. Now, you talked about the products that can be synthesized, the protein-based products. You talked about the champagne that can be synthesized, and Sberbank cannot invest in such products. I know that you are in the coffee business, and if there is a synthetic coffee that can be produced, can Sberbank actually enter in such a high-risk venture of creating a synthesized coffee? Well, thank you for your question a lot, but we do not invest in such products. We have selected 9 areas that are in one way or another deliver synergetic effect for our core business, and we invest in these areas. The production of foodstuffs is not in this priority, so we do not invest there. But there is a great number of venture funds that invest in these areas, Russian and foreign and international alike. And if you have a technology, we can help you. We won't invest in your technology, but we can present your technology to our friends from other venture funds. Thank you for the question. I'm not in this market, so I cannot really comment what is the situation in Russia. I know a lot about machine learning startups and other high-tech startups, but this market is not in the focus of our attention. It's not in our agenda, so I do not know anything about it. I do not know whether it is in Russia or not. And yes, a small remark. Fresh coffee is very good, so we need to step up the efforts here. Thank you so much. Hello, my name is Irina. I'm from Povolsky Bank, from Samara. Well, first of all, Mr. Gurev, thank you a lot for such a fantastic lecture, and thank you for giving us the opportunity of being present here. Well, it's me who thank you for being here. Thank you. So I was at a lecture of Madam Chernigovskaya, Tatiana Chernigovskaya. She made a lecture and she said that the number of psychological disorders and psychological diseases is growing because we are facing a major flow of information that is growing and growing. How do you address that problem of the information flow that is growing exponentially and that we face today? Thank you. Well, if you think about it seriously, this is the key problem, really. I'll not delve into philosophy here, but how do I face that challenge? Because these information flows are just gigantic. Every morning I start with meditation. 10-15 minutes that I spent on meditation session, Then I do sports for 1 hour or 1.5 hours. And this gives me an opportunity to navigate through my business day with a fresh mind, with a fresh head. I do not watch television at all. And since recently, I try not to use any devices before going to sleep. Restart is of critical importance, and music is of critical importance in my life. It helps me to switch to another activity. I think everyone has. It's the activity that helps you to disconnect you from this process. Mine is music, and if you do not switch off your brain, if you don't disconnect, you will see the implications like depressions and all the other psychological diseases that are so rampant in the modern world. So you need to try these things, and these psychological diseases, you need to avoid them at all costs. Thank you so much for your question. Thank you for your answer, Mr. Graf. A good day. Maria Mikhailuk from Ryazan City. Thank you so much for this lecture and for the opportunity to ask you a question. And now my question is the following. We talked a lot about trends, but we did not talk about cryptocurrency. What is your position? What is your thinking here about cryptocurrency? Well, cryptocurrency is not a trend. Blockchain is a trend. Cryptocurrency, this is a kind of a side product of this technology. This is kind of a result of this technology being implemented. I think that now this topic is on top of the agenda. When people understand what is cryptocurrency, you cannot really touch it with your hands, but, well, like many people actually earned a lot of money on that. It used to cost nothing. It used to cost peanuts, and now it costs thousands of dollars. Now, if you talk about blockchain technology, if this is the question, this is one of the key technologies of the future that will radically change the economy and the governance and the management systems and the social management system. If you talk about the cryptocurrencies, well, I believe that there is a change of notions here. People supplement one notion with another. People say that cryptocurrency is something that that is a trend. But when we talk about cryptocurrency, and yes, by the way, right now we see that China has decided to create a crypto yuan, then crypto national currency. I think someone said that a crypto ruble is going to be created, or crypto Russian currency. I don't know the details, but I heard that statement. I think it would be great for someone to explain to me and to others what is crypto ruble. I don't understand what it is. I do not understand what is crypto yuan as well. If you talk about the kind of product of the fiat currency, crypto means some kind of a technology that helps you to produce fiat money in electronic form. I believe in that. We have it right now, and it is going to be promoted, that's for sure. But when you talk about blockchain technology and Bitcoin as is, or Ethereum as is, you are talking about there is a kind of a fundamental contradiction. You talk about the method of emission of money mass, and there are two ways to make to produce this money mass. Upward trend and downward trend. Right now in the world we can see that there is a downward trend. Downward trend of currency issuance, of issuance of money. And central banks are the organs, bodies that do that, and then regulate. These regulations do not change during the time. But anyway, this is a big part of a macroeconomic policy, a monetary policy, so-called, that defines in many ways the value of a currency, the level of inflation, and the money proposition influences in many ways the dynamics of the economic growth, and it influences many industries because the policy of the central bank is related with the risk management, risk assessment in different industries, and that means that the capital inflows change. They do not, capital flows do not go to some sectors, and they are artificially directed to another other sectors. This is a kind of a orchestrated model, but it works around the world. If you talk about the cryptocurrency, about Bitcoin being this cryptocurrency, this is the decentralized mining and decentralized emission of money that is not controlled by central banks. So, if you ask a question to me whether I believe in a decentralized model today, no, I do not believe in that, because my prediction that the states, the nations are going to combat that. They will, in the best case scenario, they're going to tax it. In the worst case scenario, they're going to prohibit that, or even to use law enforcement activity to prohibit this problem, this model. The decentralized model are more sustainable, they are more liberal, they give more benefits to the economy. I mean, actually, the downward trend in the money regulation appeared in the last 150 years, perhaps. If you look at the Great Depression, the U.S. was the country that faced the depression in the most efficient way was Canada, because it was not the central bank who did the emission. The banks, separate banks, did that. And the economy was much more flexible. I tried to explain all that in just 2 words. I'm not sure whether I was clear, but you need to understand the terms. What do you understand by cryptocurrency? What is crypto ruble? If it is a mirror of a fiat currency, then yes. If it is a shift to a decentralized emission and issuance of money, no, I don't believe in that. And I don't think that we are going to see a crypto dollar, because all the U.S. economy is based on the centralized money offering. And right now, dollar is the world international currency. It is all regulated by the Fed, Federal Reserve System. And I do not believe that all this organization will give all its authority to decentralized miners. But thank you for your question. Perhaps you need to give the microphone to that girl. Good day to you. Thank you for the opportunity of asking the question. My name is Olga, and I am from the charity fund who supports disabled people. I have 2 questions. I know that you have a project that is actively being developed, which is called the Special Bank for people with disabilities, to make sure that the banking services are available for them. And perhaps some people with disabilities will be able to work in such a bank. And yes, the second question, yes, it is good that these services are being adapted, but how the employees are adapted? How do you adapt your employees to make sure that they know how to work with disabled people? Thank you. Thank you for your question. Well, first of all, we have employees who have with disabilities who work in different departments and business units and centrally subordinated units. They work in the call centers. We have a special workplaces for them, and actually, as practice show, they work better than those without disabilities. And we're going to enlarge that practice. And if you talk about the product range for people with disabilities, then first, yes, of course, we attract people with disabilities to work in these specialized product teams that create these tailored products for the people with disabilities. And because they're going to be the best here in terms of the tips and recommendations, and we do everything to prepare our people, our employees, to work with people with disabilities. If you come to our stand here, you will be able to wear this costume that we have bought, the costume that makes you feel like a person with a disability. We have bought it in all our regional banks, and we have a special program, which is a virtual reality-inspired program, and by putting on the VR goggles, you will be able to feel yourself a person in a wheelchair. And you can go from your apartment to our branch, from your home and receive services. And I can say that many Many girls who work in our branches, when they undergo this session, they start to cry because they cannot believe that it is they who do that. But the films that we do, and the videos that we do about the quality of the services of our branches are true, and we have failures, yes, sometimes. And when people feel the same emotions as people with disabilities do when they try to get the service from our branch, it changes their attitude and their level of service. But thank you again for your question. Good day to you, Mr. Greff. Thank you so much for such an exciting and instructive lecture. My name is Denis. I am representing the healthcare department for the youth of Moscow. You said a lot of things, saying that in the nearest future, artificial intelligence will develop much quicker and work much more efficient than the human intelligence. So the question is, how can you develop your human intelligence to make sure that you adapt for that? Will there be some special educational programs to develop the human intelligence? And is there a capability of human intelligence to be smarter than artificial intelligence? Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. I do not think that there is a question who is going to win. First of all, we are lagging behind in these things that I have mentioned about. We cannot calculate with the same speed as artificial intelligence does. We won't be able to store all that amount of information, to deliver that information, process that information in these seconds. We won't be able to monitor small deviations in big data, and it's absolutely fruitless to try to be smarter than artificial intelligence. I think we should learn how to leverage artificial intelligence for our agenda, for our purposes. So now when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's something else that lives on another planet, and creativity, for instance. And if you had asked me the question on how to develop the intelligence, the intellect, first is that you should develop it. That's it. Many people are not really committed to improving their own intelligence. That's the first thing. Secondly, all the boundaries are conditional. We divide all the 21st century skills into categories. First are hard skills, meaning professional skills. These are the skills that we use for our profession. We need to understand where we want to work. The problem of many people is that they do not understand what job they would like to have. And I think right now the schools, the top priorities for the schools is to help the young people to understand their strengths. Because you might be competitive in the areas where you have genetic capabilities, genetic biological advantage. And everyone have this advantage. And when one famous scientist said that you can teach turkey to get the nuts from the tree, but it is better to use a squirrel for that. So you need to understand whether you are a squirrel or a turkey. So it is very important to learn the things that where you have some advantage. The second area, the second category is soft skills. Something that many people talk about right now a lot. This is emotional intelligence, cognitive flexibility, creativity, empathy, and so on and so forth. And this also includes the ability to collaborate. These are all the competencies and skills of the 21st century, and you can do nothing in the 21st century without that. I went in a school which is called School 42 in France. We want to create a similar school in Russia, and the founders of this school, they are the largest French entrepreneurs. They have a very harsh examination to get in this school, and they train around. They have applications from 70,000 people. 40% of those people who get there are school pupils. Some people are graduates of Stanford and Harvard. Some are working people, and so on and so forth. The founders are not interested whether a person can code or not. The most interesting thing for them is how this person thinks. So on whether they commit it or not. So 70,000 people go to an examination, a test, online test. You have some tasks, some problems that have no solution.
What they look for is for how long the person is trying to resolve the unresolvable task and what the approaches are embraced in the course of this. And this is the most important. They are saying, we can teach him anything down the line, but we can't change his stripes. We can't change the character of this person. I can say the same thing about us. What we are trying to find in people is perseverance, very strong character, a person with the ability to critically think, especially think critically about him or herself. And the starting point for progress here is what we call self-reflection. The understanding of your own self. This is a key story. And the third element is what we call digital skills. Digital skills are obviously all about the modern technologies. That's the technologies that we have spoken about today. You don't have to be a coder. You just need to understand well how it works. Maybe someone of you wants to become a professional coder, Godspeed, but that many programmers we don't need. You need to understand how it works. You need to understand some language of programming, and you need to be able to use the capabilities of the modern technologies in any business you might pursue. So these three elements are the foundation pillars, and soft skills are the most important of them. Empathy, systemic thinking, that's one of the most important things. And the importance of kindergartens and schools, and your DNA, obviously, you can't really overestimate those. So these are the three elements that I think are crucial as skills for tomorrow. Thank you for the question. Mr. Graf, thank you very much for sharing your vision with us, sharing your attitude to life. This is really valuable. Question, in your opinion, do corporations need leaders? If yes, then what kinds of leaders do corporations need? If no, why not? Do corporations need leaders? Well, it depends on corporation. I do need leaders. Well, you can either be a leader or not be a leader. So what leader it is, it's a rhetorical question. You know, the difference of a leader, what differentiates a leader from a manager is that a manager knows the best way to climb a flight of stairs quickly, and the leader knows what wall to prop this ladder against. So what we are trying to hire, whom we are trying to hire, are owners of processes. People need to own what they do. We experiment with the so-called teal organizations. People determine the way they go about work. Who's going to do the bossing? Who's going to do what role? The most important thing is client satisfaction and obviously financial performance, because we are all about the bottom line in business. But we do have interesting experience. Not enough, not sufficient for industrial deployment, but we have had very interesting outcomes after the 2 years of experimentation, and we are expanding the scope of it. And we are completely transitioning to the so-called Agile Management. This is where you simply cannot control the organization from the top. I come to one of our main offices that is now home to 9,000 people. They all operate in Agile, and I'm really horrified with what they are doing there, how many they are there. Neither I nor my deputies in specific areas have no capability to control what they do there. But the most important thing is that something does go on there. What does Agile give to an organization? It gives total transparency. Those 9,000 people used to sit somewhere. They used to be holed up somewhere in their own rooms, but their product was not in everyone's view. These days they are sitting in small squads, 6 to 12 people, and we've got this room with screens. Those screens show the progress of each squad. Task burnout graphs is what squads have. I mean, you need to go from 0 to 100% in, say, 2 weeks. There are also degrees. You get all kinds of stages to those curves. Some squads exhibit the same performance as heartbeat in a morgue. Sometimes they are really flatliners, those squads are. This is very important because if you do take fright, you're never going to travel this period. But unless you have leaders in organizations like this, you can't really achieve anything. This leader of the squad, the 6 to 12 person squad, that squad needs to be led. That leader needs to assume the responsibility for the final product. And in a big organization like this, that leader needs to liaise with other teams, to coordinate with other teams. And this tribe lead, the tribe encompasses several squads, the tribe lead needs to coordinate with the squad leader about staying on track. They don't want to go into space with their endeavors in doing financial services, but they cooperate. We call this collaboration. Collaboration is one of the soft skills and perhaps the most important soft skill. If a leader came with his or her own vision, that leader cannot take his own path. That path cannot diverge with the path of the squad. So leadership is a quality that is really multifaceted. Any leader must have a vision of his or her own. That leader must put a spark in people's hearts. That person must lead the people, pull the people in his wake, but that needs to be coordinated with everyone else. Now, guys, these digits on that screen are red. Is the time up? Okay, let's make it the last 3 questions from every one of those microphones. Now, Mr. Graf, hello. My question is in continuation of your lecture. We're all talking about digitalization. We're all talking about the abilities of the artificial intelligence in the current world. Any process that can be defined, structured, it can be entrusted to a robot or to an algorithm. The most logical idea that comes up subsequently is that the positions of our public servants is the most logical that should come up next for automation and robotization. What's your forecast? What do we expect in our country from implementation of artificial intelligence in public services? Thank you. You're completely right about the first part, and I do think that this is going to happen pretty quickly. We are trying to play in this field as well. We did make our services available to the state, to the government, because digitalization today, of the kind that we see in public services, all those public service provision centers in the regions, all of them are traveling through a necessary stage in their development. It is like a person wearing a robot suit. That person is moving, the person is speaking. When we peel the hide off this robot, we see a living person, a human. Same goes for the public services. You enter the website, you come to the branch of that public service, you punch in a query in the computer, the query goes to some person, and that person does the manual labor. The manual labor is very arduous because it implies not just a technology, it's about redesign of processes, and people are supposed to redesign the processes, although machines have come about that help people to redesign the processes. One of the key areas where artificial intelligence is developing, these are process robots. Process robots really write up those processes. They help humans design the processes and replace humans eventually. But the redesign of processes is a complicated story indeed. If the state does that itself, that will take many years. If the state enlists the help of businesses on public-private partnership terms, I think this can be done in 2 or 3 years. I think the second path is really revolutionary, and I think a lot of companies would be prepared to invest their own money into it. We stand ready to invest a lot of money of our own into the automation of a lot of public services. Then bureaucracy is going to become a thing of the past. Many services you'll be able to get online, and the precision, the accuracy, and the speed of such services is going to be huge, and corruption as a phenomenon, again, is going to be consigned to history, going to be telling your people what, your kids what that is, what that used to be. Good morning. Good afternoon. Alexander Sosoyev, the Republic of Sakha, Yakutia. You touched upon this teal organization topic. I heard about those organizations. I would like to understand what use you found in such organizations, whether it's going to spread this practice, and whether you can apply the teal principles in public organizations. That's the first part of questions. And the second one is mortgage interest rates. What do you think the mortgage interest rates are going to be? Well, thank you. I do see the future behind this, so we have been experimenting with that. If you read the book by Frederick Laloux on the teal organizations, turquoise organizations, it's called Opening the Organizations of the Future. Thank you for that prompt. It defined the organization called Buurtzorg. That's one of the most advanced organizations in Holland that provides social help, social assistance, with outstanding results. That's #1 organizations in the world. This does operate teal principles. Same goes for schools. If, say we take a school in Berlin, Germany, this evangelical school of some sort, it operates the principles of teal organization completely, and fantastic performance. They are now setting up a chain of schools in the world, a network. It completely implies to any domain that you may want to apply this in. As for the mortgages, they will go down, depending on inflation and depending on other factors. I think if it's 3%, inflation is, I don't think 5% mortgage rates are very far ahead. Okay, the last question, guys. Okay, Evgeny Shkarupa. I represent the Far East, APRO-России, the Foundation of Russia. At the Far Eastern Economic Forum, you mentioned that the small businesses in Russia are largely organizations for money laundering. It wasn't an exact quote, but words to that effect. In Vladivostok, we run a forum of young entrepreneurs. We would like to invite you over so you can witness in person this is wrong. Young entrepreneurs are development-minded. They don't really launder money. They develop the economy and their businesses. Now, my question is that Sberbank has accumulated a lot of consultancy experience in implementing various technologies. Are you planning to create some centers based on Sberbank that would pass this experience down to the economy and train entrepreneurs? My question to you is, did you actually hear what I said? Yes, I was present at your speech. Well, we communicate really badly with you. You had not what I actually said. Firstly, we do much more for the development of small businesses than any other organization in the country. Actually, the 10 other organizations taken together. The question that was heard in Primorye, in the Far East, that was speculated far and wide in the media, the young man asked a question. My transaction was blocked and I can't open an account. Can you sort this out? Then I said 2 things. Number 1, and I reiterate this thing again. Guys, the world has changed very seriously. And transparency today is becoming a thing at the foreground. Any bank, all the banks, this is not specific to Sberbank, that's all the banks working in Russia and in the world, are working in a completely different paradigm today. The regulatory requirements of us are really, really steep. All of your transactions, each transaction that you may want to do, sift through compliance to money laundering requirements, terrorism financing requirements, and you need to understand that. It wasn't something that I thought of. This is the current reality. And I actually told this guy, there's two things in this situation. One, because the machine does this and not humans, this is the artificial intelligence that we trained but we automated to analyze your transactions. There's two options. Option one, this can be an error of the machine, and we're going to rectify this error. Option two, we get a lot of queries in this respect, and about 90 cases, the machine is right. And 10% of the cases are the areas that we rectify. And those 10% become increasingly fewer. And if this is not 10% of errors, 90% probability is your transaction is suspicious. And I apply to all the young entrepreneurs present in this room. I mean, this panel was for the young businesses. Guys, the world has changed. A lot of small businesses were created for the so-called one-day firms, one-day outfits, to launder money, not to pay taxes, to run a lot of volumes around. You can shake your head or not shake your head, but this is what the stats show. And that case that was put to me, unfortunately, was one of those cases. The machine was right in that case. So guys, today, the most important thing that you have is reputation. Do not jeopardize your reputation to any business like this. If intransparency, if opaque business used to be acceptable yesterday, it is no longer going to be acceptable today. If a founder of a company allowed an opaque operation, we're going to keep asking questions. You're going to get the problems with opening your personal accounts. Your personal accounts are going to be subjected to special analysis regime. So please, young entrepreneurs, we are living in a completely different world. That's all I said. I do not understand how you were able to hear what you have just said, but mysterious though it is to me, please take care of your reputation. This is the most valuable thing that you have, all of us have. Now, secondly, about translating our experience countrywide. Together with Google, and I thank them for their partnership, they are wonderful partners, including the Far East. In this year, we're going to run this in 20 regions of Russia. We're going to do special business classes to train young entrepreneurs, including training them in high technologies. This is all free. We are doing this at the expense of two companies, Google and Sberbank. And over 2 years, we're going to run this around the country. The first one was in Tatarstan. 17,000 entrepreneurs were trained. And the response was very, very interested. And a lot of entrepreneurship came about out of that. We've got a whole number of products that are tailored specifically for this. This year, we launched another program ourselves. We've got a special product lineup, the so-called Startup Easy. We offer a whole number of products for free to people, the people who start their business. And if you're an average company, then we've got our subsidiary called Strategy Partners. They help in developing a strategy for your company and implementing the most cutting-edge technologies. So we are trying to do our best. If you have other ideas about how else we can help, we're going to respond as best we can. Guys, perhaps so much we can say, let us thank the organizers. I would like to say thank you very much to Sergei Vladimirovich Kiriyenko, who prompted us to take part in this. We were able to invite 700 people from Sberbank to this wonderful event that this festival is. And thank you, organizers, for this wonderful festival, the way it was organized. And thank you guys for your activity.